One of the best ways to learn is by observing. But there's a difference between observing and simply looking. Observing includes using all of your senses and focusing closely and carefully on something, whether through looking, listening, touching, smelling, or tasting. You can learn a lot by intentional observing. If we want our students to be able to learn for themselves, this is one of the first tools that we should give them practice in using. Here's how. I'm Sonia Shaver. Welcome to the Simply Charlotte Mason podcast. Make sure you've subscribed. We bring you new encouragement and Charlotte Mason training for homeschool parents every week. At first glance, it can seem like the Charlotte Mason approach has a lot of different methods for different subjects. But when you boil it all down, this approach really centers around 6 tools: observe, read, tell, record, memorize, and create. These are the tools that will equip your student to learn for herself and continue that learning throughout a lifetime. We introduced the 6 tools last time. If you missed that episode, check the description for a link. Today, we want to talk about giving your student the tool of observing. Now, as I mentioned, there's a difference between seeing and observing, intentionally observing and casual looking. Whenever I think about that difference, a scene from a book flashes across my mind. Most of you are familiar with the illustrious fictional detective Sherlock Holmes. He's famous for solving mysteries by paying close attention to details, by observing, not just looking. Well, in this scene, Holmes explains the secret of his success to his assistant, Watson. "When I hear you give your reasons," Watson remarked, "the thing always appears to me to be so ridiculously simple that I could easily do it myself. Though at each successive instance of your reasoning, I'm baffled until you explain your process. And yet I believe that my eyes are as good as yours." "Quite so," Holmes answered. "You see, but you do not observe. The distinction is clear. For example, you have frequently seen the steps which lead up from the hall to this room." "Frequently? How often?" "Well, some hundreds of times." "Then how many are there?" "How many? I don't know." "Quite so. You have not observed, and yet you have seen. That is just my point. Now, I know that there are 17 steps because I have both seen and observed." When your student observes something closely and carefully for herself, she forms a personal relation with it. She forms a mental image of the object in her mind, and it becomes her own possession. But observation includes more than just seeing. It can involve any of the senses. You can observe with your eyes, your ears, your nose, your taste buds, and your fingers. Many of us rely on one of those senses more than the others. But if your student receives regular practice in observing with the other senses, she can strengthen them and use them more easily to form even more relations with the world around her. The best part is that observation encourages your student to think for herself and to enjoy making her own discoveries. It motivates her to take the initiative and see what she can learn for herself through her own senses, rather than passively waiting for someone else to spoon-feed her what they have observed and learned. Observation is a powerful tool for self-education. Happily, observation is one of the first tools that a Charlotte Mason education teaches your student to use. In picture study, your student looks closely and carefully at a work of art. In music study, she intentionally listens to a piece of music. In nature study, she uses as many senses as she possibly can safely to see what she can observe about God's creation around her. When she's learning a handicraft or doing an art project, she's encouraged to take the time to closely observe what it is she's supposed to do with her hands at each step of the process. In foreign language, she first listens, and then when she gets older, she also looks closely at the new words in each series of statements, observing any changes in those words as the series become more complex. In reading and spelling, your student is given the opportunity to look closely at a word and to form a mental image of it with each letter in its place. In English grammar, she's guided to notice for herself common practices of capitalization, punctuation, and usage. Everyday objects are used in math lessons to help your student discover for herself how numbers work. And geography lessons encourage her to look closely and carefully at maps in order to form her own mental maps of regions around the world. Now, if you're not sure how to teach any of those subjects, check the description for links to resources that will show you how. All of these wonderful subjects have opportunities to observe built in as part of the lessons, and they're all designed to give regular practice in observing. Why? So your student will become adept at intentionally using her senses to learn what she can for herself. Now, as your student is practicing with this tool, you can either encourage or discourage her progress with it. So let me give you 3 practical tips to keep in mind as you teach these subjects. Tip number 1, please don't play guess what the teacher is thinking. We've all been in that situation. The teacher asks a question that's worded like he wants to know your observation, but in reality, he has one answer in mind. And any answer you give is unacceptable or, well, yes, but what else? Until you finally say the one thing he was thinking of. In other words, he expects your observation to match his own. That's not the Charlotte Mason approach to observation. Charlotte truly wanted children to make their own discoveries, and parents, as guides, are also fellow learners and observers. There's something special that happens when 2 people look or listen to the same picture, the same piece of music, and make different observations about it. That happening reinforces to your student that different people have different perspectives and that we can learn from each other. So when you ask your student, what do you notice? Allow her to express her own observations in her own words and in her own way. That's part of respecting her as a person. If there is a specific detail that you would like your student to discover for herself, you can shine the spotlight on that one particular aspect of the nature friend or whatever it is. For example, you could say, "What do you notice about this bird's eyes?" Or, "How do you see that this bird's eyes are different from an eagle's?" Well, now you've narrowed the focus and directed her attention to one part that you especially want her to observe. But even then, be open to accepting her observations. They might not be exactly what you had in mind, but that doesn't mean they are inferior. Don't play guess what the teacher is thinking. That's not observing. That's guessing. Tip number 2, honor your child's observations. If you want your student to get excited about learning for herself through her own observations, then value those observations and affirm them. Do your best to share in the wonder of discovery. Keep in mind that what your student observes may be common knowledge to you, but it's new to her. Charlotte said, "One of the secrets of the educator is to present nothing as stale knowledge, but to put himself in the position of the child and wonder and admire with him." Home Education, page 54. Wonder and admire as a fellow learner. And be sure to direct that wonder and admiration toward the object that caused it rather than toward the student who observed it. If you direct your wonder and admiration at the student and make a big deal about, oh, how good she is at observing, she'll begin to depend on your praise as the reward for learning, rather than on the joy of discovery as the reward. There's a difference between honoring an observation and flattering the observer. We want to honor the student's observation. In other words, give as much weight and consideration to her observation as you would to your own. Different people will observe different things. One person will notice minute details. Another will notice larger, sweeping generalities. Someone will notice the words, and someone else the colors. One will notice shapes. Another will notice the details such as size and proportion. You can learn a lot about how your student perceives the world through her observations. So honor what she shares with you. I'm curious if any of your children have ever surprised you or maybe enlightened you with their observations. Young children especially are so good at observing, and sometimes their remarks about what they notice are quite fun and eye-opening. I'd love to hear some of your experiences with this. Leave a comment and let me know about a time when your child observed something that surprised you. Tip number 3, encourage spontaneous observations. You can cultivate the tool of observing during formal school lessons and also in everyday life. The more your student practices with that tool, the more adept she will become at using it to learn for herself. Just remember, close observation takes time, unhurried time. So try to establish daily rhythms that create space for spontaneous observations. And let me just tuck a word of caution in here as we discuss daily rhythms. Beware of electronic games and programs that quickly flit from one picture to the next. That continuous quick switching will begin to program your child's brain to keep moving rather than to stay in one place and observe one thing closely and carefully. Just keep in mind that the more your child is used to seeing things quickly move, the harder it will be for her to focus for any length of time on one thing that stands still or that moves slowly. And that type of focus is a key to good observation. Here's something fun you can do with the whole family, including the young children, to encourage observation. Charlotte called it sensory gymnastics because it gives everybody an opportunity to exercise the various senses and practice observing with them. Pick an object. Charlotte often used one from nature. And tell which sense to use in order to describe it. So you might say, tell one thing about how this feels. And pass the object around the group and invite each person to tell one observation that he has made with that one sense, how it feels. If you have more time, you can do a second round focusing on a different sense, like tell one thing about how this looks, or how it smells, or how it sounds. Each person must listen carefully to what the others share and make sure they don't repeat something that was already said. It's a fun little exercise that you can use occasionally. Plus, it's a great way to expand your child's vocabulary as they search for the words to describe exactly what they have observed. You and your student can learn a lot by looking and listening closely and carefully, by using your senses intentionally to see what you can discover for yourself. Observation is a powerful tool for self-education, and it is built into the Charlotte Mason approach in many subjects. Give your student daily practice in using this tool, and then sit back and observe for yourself how much your student is growing. Check out the links in the description for resources that make it easy to include observation in your homeschool. Next time, we'll talk about a tool that your student can use when first-hand observation is not possible. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.